And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Downfall from Tasty Minstrel Games, designed by John Clare. That combination had me really excited. John Clare has made some of my favorite games. I really like his design style. Downfall set in a post-apocalyptic, everything is destroyed type universe. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of that theme, but whatever. There's some really neat aspects, and this game is chock full of pieces. Let's check it out. At the beginning of the game, you're going to build a map and reveal certain spots that are on the board. Players are going to basically pick one of these spots. They get to put out a certain number of people. They have to pick one of their zones to be a dead zone, and some zones have irrigation in them. And so you're going to be doing all this. This is actually a good chunk of the rule book showing how to do this. Or, and I would highly recommend this for your first game, you can pick in a quick start guide per player count. It will show you a way just to set the board up so that it's fairly even, because how and where you start is a big deal. Players are going to have airships that they can put out, but they're also going to have bunkers they can put on the board, and so there's a lot of different things that you're going to be putting out and all over the board. So you have the bunkers. I'm sorry, this is the bunker. That was an outpost, which I just showed you. There's these pieces, and so the setup's going to be different every single time. These tiles that are out there, and you'll notice that some of these tiles have not been discovered yet, and you'll be discovering these tiles as the game goes by. They may be made up of different areas. This one has 2 on it, while there's even some that have 3 different spots on them. And each player is going to start kind of with they're not necessarily equal, but you should start in a somewhat similar position. There's going to be a board here where players are going to keep track of their victory points. They're also keeping track of their environment points and their culture points. Both of moving higher on those tracks can give you benefits. There's another track here, and this keeps track of the game. This piece is going to be moving. Players are going to have their own deck of cards, and every time they draw a winter card, and they're going to start with 2 of these in their deck, every time you draw one, you discard it immediately. You move the event token one, then draw a new card. And so at different points on here, there's going to be spoilage, and then you'll have to feed your people at various times. Sometimes there's going to be conflicts. Here you'll put some random event cards that when you get to these, you'll do whatever it says. So it says all space have 0 radiation, and our next to dead zones get 1 radiation. Then each player may choose and remove any one radiation threat. So that's going to happen when you get to those spots. And radiation is going to spread on the board, and new dead zones are going to be created when you get to these spots. And when you get to the very end, you will finish the game, and whoever has the most points is the winner. Players are going to have their own player board in front of them. This board is going to basically give you what you're going to be doing over the course of the game. And so you're going to be choosing cards and actions to play, and this board basically tells you what to do. Although you have cyber storage where you'll be able to store something, you have technology cards here that you'll be able to build, and these cards will sometimes be tucked underneath the board, making the certain actions that you play better. Now, like I said, players have this big deck of cards, and in each round of the game, you're going to draw a card, and if you draw a winner card, whoop, then you move that other track forward. Otherwise, by the way, I said everyone starts with 2 winner cards. I was wrong. There's 3. Anyway, otherwise, you're then going to pick one of these cards, and you're going to be playing this card. You're going to be choosing a card to play. The cards you don't pick, you're going to be passing to other people, and those cards could end up in their deck if they choose to play it. So as the game goes by, you'll see it. This here, I have all the green players' cards. I probably should be using the blue ones here to match my technology cards. I have all the blue cards, but as the game goes by, some of these cards are going to come out of my deck, and I'm going to have all different colors at the end. I start with a certain number of each of the actions, but like for example, there's 2 build actions here, but I might have 4 build actions as the game goes by, depending on what other people pass to me. Each card that you can play is going to be played as its major action on the side here, or you can play it as the bottom action. The bottom action is called the secondary action. It's kind of like a major action, but it does a little bit less of what you're trying to do on the board. So, for example, the gathering action will say, okay, you have a space on the board, you have some survivors there. Those survivors are going to gather some of the resources for each survivor that you have here. That's what gathering will do. You'll flip the token over. This is kind of like raw out in the wild token, and you'll flip it over to show that it's been gathered, that you can use that token. But the minor one here is like a major one, but only 2 of your survivors can gather instead of all of them. So secondary actions, you can use them, they're just not quite as good. I mentioned the gather action. Regrow lets you put new resources out at different areas that you control. Reinforce lets you basically get more resources wherever your bunkers are, or get more troops. Or you can get all 3 of them, but sometimes you don't want all 3 for whatever reason. Building lets you spend resources to build on spaces that you occupy. And so you have the option of building more of these ships and or bunkers and outposts that you can put there. And you can see that bunkers can hold 3 resources, outposts can hold 1, and they can also hold troopers, and troopers can also be, you can move stuff around in these airships as well as resources on them. Command basically will let you put out some essentially tokens that will help you in combat. You can spend 2 movement points to move things around, and you can also spend oil to do extra stuff. Research gives you a technology, although many of the technologies have a cost. For example, here's a simple one. Upgraded cyber storage. I put this here, and now instead of storing 1 unit, a resource there, I can store 2 there. Hovercrafts. For every major command action, you may either move 1 extra survivor or airship, or place a command token for free. So each of these are going to be doing something special. The main difference, you don't have to play with this one. It's a deploy leader. It's a special thing that you can play in the advanced type game. But you have different technologies. You'll never build them all, but you can get some of them. And then war, you can, if you do that one, you can fight in a conflict you're in, where you'll be adding up the amounts of points that you have in a region compared to somebody else that's there. So I mentioned that as the game progresses, there's going to be events that will happen, which will be on that main board. The spoilage, where when that occurs, which is this little thing here on the event track, all your unstored gathered resources are destroyed. Then you have to feed your population. And the first feed event, everyone gets 3 free food to feed people, and then you get 2 the second time, and third you get 1. But you have to discard 1 food for each survivor that you have on the board. For each survivor that you can't feed, well, then you either lose 2 victory points, or you can lose only 1 victory point and lose a survivor instead. And again, that is why on this board here, even though you start at 0, you can see it does go into the negative points. So that's going to happen 3 times over the course of the game. Fallout will happen, and dead zones will spread radiation. Each dead zone on the board is going to spread radiation to every spot that it touches. The game comes with plenty of radiation tokens to do that, and you'll be spreading those out to the various places that you're next to. And if there's ever 3 or more radiation tokens in a certain area, then boom, that's gone. That area is also dead there. Everyone dies, and you lose 1 point for each survivor who dies in that spot. Then conflict will happen if you're in the same spot as somebody else, and you will fight back and forth unless you are trying to do, if there's no conflict on the board, then there can be peace. And again, you kind of just fight back and forth with each other. You get battle strength for various things. You'll note that on many of the tokens, there are little battle strength tokens there to show how much they do. Also, survivors can't hang out in areas that have radiation, even if it's not a dead zone. But some of these spots, like this token here, will give you protection from a certain amount of radiation if you have it in the spot. So I may need to build more of these so that my survivors can survive that radiation. At the very end of the game, you do all these events. You do spoilage, fallout, and conflict together. Now, as you build, you'll be able to spend points to get rid of radiation, or spend certain points to get rid of radiation. That's a pretty big deal because you're trying to get radiation off the board. When you do that, you'll be moving up on the environmental track here, and as you go up farther on this track, it will also give you extra victory points. taking the reinforce action can move you farther up on the culture track, which can give you various bonuses as you get farther up on that track. So points mostly for this track, culture mostly for this track, and then of course this is the main victory point track. At the end of the game, whoever has the most victory points is the winner of the game, and then there's going to be a whole bunch of events, and people are going to get shattered all over the place through having radiation hit you, but you're trying to survive. The game Downfall is a game of surviving across this board, and whoever has most points is the best survivor. As you can see, there are tons of components for this game. I mean, here inside this box, I have all the ships. You build these ships out of cardboard. I'm not even showing you the deluxe version of the game. I'm just showing you a normal version of the game. But you know what? It's really nice. My only complaint maybe about the game is a lot of these tokens, these resource tokens, are not always easy to see on the board. And I know they went for like beautiful backgrounds and stuff, but sometimes the board, you can see from here, almost looks a little bit like a muddled mess. Now, the player boards are extremely helpful. What does everything do? It tells you that, it explains it. I also like the cards. I like the artwork. The artwork looks great, and the game is super good quality. Just great quality across the board, and you get a ton, to the point where it's very difficult to fit everything back in the box. Great components. All right, well, this might have bled through in the game explanation, but I think that Downfall is very well designed. I think that many people might very well enjoy this game. In fact, some of the people I play with seem to like it. I loathe it. But I know why, right? I don't think it's because it's a bad game. It's just not what I'm looking for in a game. See, in this game, you need to feed your people, something I complain about a lot. You also need to stop radiation from going around and destroying your people. You also need to maybe kind of avoid wars with other people and constantly be eking out the barest existence. This game is despair in a box. Utter and sheer despair. It's horrifically depressing. Your people are starving, they're being destroyed by radiation, and yet somehow the game also says you can fight with each other. And so far, I've seen, I think, 1 or 2 battles in this game, because it feels like there's a guy over there, he's laying on the ground, he's irradiated and he's starving, and I walk over and I kick him. I can't do that. Besides, I'm too busy taking care of my own stuff. Whoa. And the game just domino effect. The radiation goes, and you feed people and resources everywhere. First of all, if you're playing this for the first time, play the basic game. Do the exact setup, because if you don't pick the right setup, you won't have enough food, or you won't have the resources to fight the radiation at all. This game is a constant flow of, I'll stop the radiation, I'll stop the food, but you're barely keeping it at bay. And I know, again, that's kind of what this game is about. That's the theming of the game. But for me, that's not fun. Now, I do like the card system. It's fascinating. You play cards, then you got to pass your handful of cards. So I got to think carefully. I know that I only have so many build cards, for example. And if I pass one to someone, because I don't need to use build right now, and I pass the other one, I may never get a build card back. I mean, I could still use the build sub action, but that's garbage compared to the main one. So that's a really neat thing. It's not really deck building, but it's just this passing around of cards. You got to really think about the actions that you take. That's my favorite thing about the game. I also think that the track is interesting and the components are nice and the random events are neat, that they're going to be different every game. I just can't deal with this game. This loathing, crushing despair, I work with in cooperative games because all of us are working together to stop some mortal bad enemy. Here, the enemy is already attacked, I guess, and just radiation and starvation everywhere. And that's, again, doesn't mean that the game itself is inherently bad. It's fine. But let's take another game designed by John Clare, Space Base. I love Space Base because every turn dice are rolled and I'm getting stuff. I'm getting stuff. I'm getting stuff. That's fantastic. I like getting stuff. But here it feels like every turn things get worse. And after a while, I'm not looking for a cool card to play for my hand. Instead, I'm looking for a card that somehow lets me survive. Everything seems to be going poorly. And yes, you can do well at this game. And yes, you can succeed despite the despair. And yes, you can do well. But even at the end of the game, let's say you have a good game and you win the game, you're still looking at a shrunken, beat-up thing. And I would wager that nobody could play this game perpetually. You would eventually just fall into ruin your whole thing. And I kind of want to play a game where I'm starting with a kingdom that may be small, and at the end I'm like, woo-hoo-hoo, look what I built. Here it's like, look what I built and then was demolished. So I know this is a bit of a one-note review but I'm telling you, I think if that bothers you, you will also not like the game. If that does not bother you, then maybe you will enjoy this game. If you like an Agricola, for example, if you like the fact that you have to struggle to get food, that's one of your favorite parts of Agricola, you will love this. It's that times 100. And surely it is a fantastic production, but that's Tasty Minstrel Games. That's what they do these days. And surely people are going to like this game. I just can't stand in that number. Dice Tower Judgment, it's probably a good game, but I hate it.